So, how does ChatGPT compare to previous technology advancements, Murali?
Uh, Very interesting question. In my viewpoint, I think it is as powerful and as ubiquitous as electricity in the early part of the previous century.
Okay. And would you look at ChatGPT as a fundamental building block of the future?
I think so. It is as powerful as learning a language, learning the alphabets, learning the words, and learning our knowledge, and slowly graduating to syntax semantics, and even up to the level of epistemology.
Okay. Wonderful. How can you use generative AI to figure out your own career, not just jobs you're interested in? Today, we have an experienced expert who will tell us how you can explore options. Murali Sundaram is a seasoned technology consultant with over 25 years of experience in the IT industry. He has collaborated and consulted with corporations, governments, and institutions, providing expertise in emerging technologies such as generative AI, digital twins, quantum computing, advanced materials, and digital transformation. With a strong background as an architect, designer, and developer, Murli has also advised on critical areas like security, compliance, and governance, including frameworks such as SOX, Basel, or I hope I'm saying that right, and HIPAA. He leads the Special Interest Group for AI at IIT Madras Research Park. He teaches courses on generative AI, emerging technologies, and innovative management at institutions like Vail Tech and SRM University. A sought after speaker at industry events, Murli is dedicated to sharing his knowledge and expertise with others. An alumnus of IIT Madras, Murli graduated in 1981 and continues to be a thought leader. I'm Venugopal Nair. I head Ideascape Communications. And every week we go on different career journeys. And today is a career journey unlike most others because Murli is going to be telling you how you can actually use ChatGPT not just to explore careers, but to build your own. Welcome to the show, Murli.
Thank you.
Great to have you. So, where did your sort of, closeness to technology begin? You graduated from IIT in 1981, but what did you study? What were your interests?
Originally, my interest was in mathematics alone, right?
Okay.
After getting into IIT, we had the usual going abroad dream, and I was advised that metallurgy is a good area to look at it, and I selected that, and I started loving it, as you go through the career. But when I finished the career, all road leads to Rome. So I joined into the IT services area. And I was focusing more in the early part on the research and development with this company by name Income Electronics. And they were doing graphics terminals and processor level algorithms development and things like that. And I was part of the team, and I started my career with Income R&D, and then eventually traveled abroad. I was there for about 10, 15 years. Came back in first part of 2000. I was working with Anna University, KBC Research Park on one hand, and I was consulting for the company Covances as an emerging technology consultant. My role is, the technology is coming at you at an average of 100 technology per year. So for IT services company, they need to figure out what is mature, what should they adapt, because they have different verticals. And they need a credible, reliable voice with the clients in terms of talking about technology, building solutions, pivoting around when they have challenges. These kind of supports I was doing, and I consulted with Coansys, Exaware, Cognizant. Most of the corporation, I helped them in those areas. And recently, I have focused more on the generative AI. We can talk more about how it is helping me and also helping me to help others in terms of developing and building the career.
Yeah, great. We'll get there, but I want to understand how a role like this sort of came your way, or is it that you opted for it? Because if you're looking at emerging technologies and, like you said, they are literally coming at you, uh, practically changing by the year. So, how would you figure out what was the way that a company needed to implement or go after
Uh,
those decisions?
very, very good question, Venu. Most of the corporates are focused on year or quarter on quarter profits. They call it business as usual, right? So they're very focused on that. And because of that, they are looking at productivity and efficiency, allied technology, and they are blind spotted mostly on innovations and disruptions that are coming on your way. So you need to have an outside in view in order to advise them. And in order to do that, you shouldn't be part of the corporate at all, so they say. You need to be outside, mostly a consultant advising them on what are the technologies that are arriving at our doorstep, something like barbarians at the gates kind of thing. So in order for you to figure that out, you need to be outside. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. The outsider looking in rather than the insider looking out. Are you saying that that is the way it works, or is it?
Mostly you would have noticed, insiders are not allowed to look outside. So, if you look at Microsoft or IBM or any of the bigger corporations, they are trained to look at only their products and solutions and services.
Right.
So
Right.
that is a corporate view.
Irrespective of how the market is changing. Yeah.
Correct. Correct.
that-
Correct.
So, do you remember any particular, technology adoption at one point that you felt would be important, and what are the ways in which you got the company to understand that time to make that move?
There were several I could think of. Earlier on, we used to have the character terminals. You might have known V252 and V300. They would be connected to the system, and so the graphics and the visualization part was very early on the 80s actually. So Income Electronics invested quite a bit on the R&D to develop their own graphics terminal. There were Tektronix terminal globally very popular, and slowly there were graphics standards that are coming up. Graphics kernel system, Apollo workstation, Sun workstation, where some of the early graphics oriented workstations that were coming up. Now they're all part of any laptop. But in those days, in order for you to have the right graphics terminal, uh, there are a lot of prerequisites for that. So a lot of companies were thinking engineering design or design related to deeper research problem is only a smaller percentage. They would say probably 2 or 4%, and they wouldn't want to actually invest on those kind of technology. They couldn't figure out a graphics or a user interface that is friendly to the user. You don't have to write programs, but you can point and click and get the activities done. Uh, that thought leadership was not there, and you have to wait till Apple or Actually, originally it was Xerox PARC, and it was adopted by Apple and Windows, and slowly it moved on. It's still, if you look at the history, Apollo and Silicon Sun workstations were the most popular one those days. So people were aspiring to get that into their screen. When you look at AutoCAD 3D drawing, a 3D printed circuits, or surface drawing, IDEA, several of the graphic packages were envied upon. Those are all special graphics terminal that I used to work on. And several technology associated with that, something like a fractal based geometry was introduced back in 80s. And, I was part of developing the original polygon fill algorithm, they will say,
Wow. Okay.
there is a polygon on your screen and you seed it, and it will fill the polygon. You need to find the edge, you need to find the apexes and fill it up to that and stop when it comes to that. And those that you got to program only at the assembly level,
Right.
not the C80, but something like NEC 7220, those kind of a code yet.
Okay. Okay. So you're talking of a time before even things like operating systems were known. OSs really came into 90s and 90. The early 90s is when I think Windows 95, I think, is the first time when a GUI actually came for the regular PCs. Or was it there before that?
Yes, Windows people would say that, but if you ask Apple, they will say, we were the first there. But if you ask the Xerox PARC, they will say they were the first one. So there is this competition on that. Yes, you're right. Operating system were the first one to get adopted at large. And then slowly we moved to the GUI based system. And then suddenly the internet came and everything changed.
Everything changed.
Yeah.
So you've actually seen two massive tectonic shifts. One is the coming of the internet, and now ChatGPT and AI. And these have happened within a couple of decades of each other. So let's talk of what things were like when the internet first came in. What did you see would be the change, and how is it played out?
Where do I start? There was a Nobel Prize laureate on economics who talked about the nature of the firm. This is Ronald Coase. He wrote a paper called Nature of the Firm back in 1931. And almost 60 years later, only he got the Nobel Prize for economics for his paper on that. In that, he talked about what are the costs of doing a business and why should a firm exist. The interesting point there is they're talking about the search cost for doing a service, right? Okay. So if you want to find a vendor and you need to connect with them and you have to use his or her services, imagine before the internet, it would have costed quite a bit of money for you, right? But the internet became a singularity point that it was giving you the actual business productivity and reduces the search cost dramatically down at least 100 times global, right? So that is the power of commercialization and the economic leverage that you could have because of that. And internet actually was able to connect people and show real productivity and efficiency in all sort of businesses, I would say. And of course, there was a bubble on the .com as well. People were enthusiastic.
Again, now they're talking of AI being another bubble, but then again, it has to pass through these stages in order for people to adopt it or begin to understand what the issues are.
Yes.
But I also remember how game-changing email was. Today, of course, it's become a commodity and it's available on your, it's one of the earliest things that you sign up for. And what a big change it was when Google came and said that we will give you 2 GB of data to begin with.
Right.
It started off with 2 MB and 3 MB. So that was 100%, 100 times suddenly. When
Right.
I remember Gmail addresses being so sought after and people saying, do you have an invite? Do you have an invite?
Yes.
All of these things. So
Absolutely.
I'm talking more from a person on the outside rather than the people in technology who were seeing this happen. And it marked a massive change
Yes.
in terms
Indeed.
of how.
Right.
Yeah.
Everybody in their personal life became productive, satisfied, even, at some level, our grandmas and grandpas also had an email address. They started leveraging technology in a useful way, I think. Right? Definitely, internet dramatically changed everything. And in between, you also have to remember cloud, which has given sufficient amount of architectural change, technology change, some of the fear about automation and how it got alleviated. Now you have more engineers, even though you have more cloud and more services. Ideally, VMware should have been the guys who should have innovated, but it was Amazon who did that. So that was the outside in switch throw you can think of. Actually.
And VMware was anyway, in a sense, what they were doing was the cloud, but
Yes,
who managed to sort of say that and establish it in that way.
absolutely, absolutely. Some of the new companies, if you look at it, if you look at YouTube, you can almost think that Prime and Netflix are nothing but a mutation on the YouTube, if you will, right?
Yeah.
That business opportunity, that way of capturing people's imagination and provide you the service came from outside. There is a management guru by name Clay Christensen, and he almost challenges you with a thought that big companies cannot innovate. Right? That is a shocker for many people. Guys like IBM would say, no, we do the innovation all the time. Like that. What he is trying to tell you about is the architecture of the company architecture of doing business. But even the investor would say, if you say I'm going to innovate, they will say your job is to do business, not innovate. Right? So that's why you're seeing more startups engaged in innovation being very successful. Even if you look at the ChatGPT or OpenAI, interestingly, Google had all the tools and wherewithal. The first one who came up with, you know, pardon all the Google guys, but it was OpenAI who came up with that.
Yes.
So you can see that the innovation happens from outside in perspective, and whoever is able to adapt earlier, the benefit of that.
Yes. And it also means that you have to be able to take on a giant in its field and succeed. Because I remember the first time when Google came up with search, Microsoft wasn't very impressed because it said search is something you do on machines. We already have search. They didn't think indexing the entire World Wide Web was any more complex than.
Right, right. I mean,
So
Yahoo was already there.
nothing.
For example,
Yes.
Yahoo was already there. They were very
It was already there. Yeah.
and they were able to catch
That was more. Yes, but that was more human indexing rather than algorithms doing the ranking, right?
right.
As opposed to the other. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
That's right.
I'll just make some announcements and then come back to you. Okay. I'm talking to Murali Sundaram, and in the first part, what we discussed is how he got into technology. He passed out of IIT in 1981 and went through the technology revolution as it happened. Like he said, he was there even before the internet arrived. So he's seen every single aspect of how companies have changed and evolved. And he made the case for how the internet came in and changed everything about how business was done and how it just collapsed the distances between companies and the ability to communicate, which has been a big aspect of how we do business today. Anyone who looks at e-commerce and YouTube and social media today would find it exceedingly difficult to figure out how the world managed before the internet. But for those of us who lived through a time when the internet was not available, it really didn't make we didn't think we were missing too much because there were so many other things to do. In the next part of the segment that we're going into, he had started talking of ChatGPT looking at coming and replacing search as the fundamental way in which people navigate. We'll try and understand a lot more. And this is the point at which people who are coming out and looking at careers and saying that, how can I leverage Gen AI to build my career, should pay attention. If you've liked what you heard so far, please subscribe, share, and let your friends know, because the idea here is to ensure that the career options that are opening up to you are exponentially expanded now. And that is exactly what we will be going into. When we went in, you spoke of ChatGPT coming and changing the game again, though Google was already doing it. So, what do you think that they have managed to do?
So some of the technologies and some of the architectural elements were already there. When you talk about transformer, LLMs, these were some of them that are already there. What ChatGPT is able to do is take on a very large, complex problem. Typically, when you want to solve a problem, people would say, focus on one problem, solve it well, and then you can go and scale the other, right? But they probably went the other way, saying that I want to answer any question that anybody asks in any language. It's very ambitious to look at that. And they approached it, I would say, modestly. Nowadays, it is being criticized for as well, in the sense that they were saying, I may make mistake, use it carefully, right? For the first time in software or software engineering, a software is able to get away saying that I may make mistake, right? That itself is both humorous and interesting take, I think. I've talked about this in many places, right? Whether you want to solve a mathematics problem or a research problem or a literature problem, not a problem, or a commentary. Let's say you want Martin Buber and Franz Kafka to discuss about existential crisis in 21st century. The topic looks exotic, and even the content can look very, very, very nice and well thought of. Supporting in storybooks. Actually, it literally, you could have seen that in the early part of November, within about a month, uh, the the number of adapting users become exponentially high. They reach the billion in a very fast manner. And it is not one of the social media app kind, it's not an entertainment you are looking at it, like not like, audio, video, kind of a, social media rage that everybody is adapting and things like that, right? Not like Netflix. So what has happened there is that what ChatGPT was able to offer to them on their personal life was productive and useful. That's why they are adapting. No, because if it is just entertainment, only one segment of people will adapt, right? And if it is actually productivity, efficiency, learning, and challenging you in certain fashion, then the worldwide adoption is becoming very, very large. So that is where it has moved quite a bit well away from some of the so-called hallucinations and challenges it had, and it has improved quite a bit. But fundamentally, it is a probabilistic model. It is likely to, the results are probable answers for your question. That is very different from an answer for your question. We are used to deterministic answers for a question, but what most of the generative AI tools will give you is a probable answer for your question.
Absolutely. So, since careers are built on probabilities, as to
Good one.
your combination of qualifications and your interests, you say that ChatGPT or generative AI is among the best tools to use to determine your own career.
Okay.
Like, how that is possible?
Yeah, I mean, at some level, education is changing. We will not go there. We will look at the career part, right? So career again, right? Even in career, if you look at it, most of the corporate are absorbing students from various colleges, engineers, graduates, and they try to adapt them to their work life or their set of skills that is needed for them. And it takes time. It takes time in terms of orientation of the individual. It takes time in terms of people adapting to new skills and environment. Those kind of things are there, right? But what happens in reality is what they learn in their life. For example, I learned metallurgy. Out of my interest, I catch up with a lot of advances in advanced material. But in the natural way, it doesn't any way connected to any of the fundamentals that we learn. What you need to learn is slightly skewed, if not orthogonal to what you learn, right? Sometimes it is people skill, sometimes it is English skill, sometimes it's little bit of math skill, some logical skill. If you want to crack an IAS paper, that's in a different direction. If you want to create GRE, that is in a different direction, right? So in all of this, how do you get yourself ready for cracking an exam, cracking an interview, acquiring a skill, develop your career? These are multidimensional, if you will, right? There is no one single answer for that, right? And one who is good at solving one paper or securing very good mark in colleges doesn't mean he was going to have a good career, right? One who is passing the exam doesn't mean he or she has the knowledge. So these kind of, I would say, aberrations and gaps, it's becoming more and more visible now. So what is needed for you, you will be able to focus and you will be able to acquire those skills is the opportunity
Okay.
that the ChatGPT is.
So let me play a scenario for you where a person has passed out any branch of engineering or is a regular graduate. So let's take a graduate in science or commerce. At what point, what are among the first steps that they should take in order to figure out how to navigate this whole thing? Like you just explained, there are so many rabbit holes and so many paths that it can lead to. But if you were starting off and you had no idea of what you wanted to do apart from the degree which you have, where would you begin to start prompting ChatGPT to try and find a direction and then see if it aligns with what you have in mind?
No, that is a tough question because most of the, even when I graduated out, if somebody were to ask me, what would you want to become? When I was very young, I used to think that I want to become a road engine driver, right? So, those were the, fantasies we had. But in reality, what you need to understand is we need to be useful for the company that we are working. We need to be employable. They need to get money, and that's the way you can get money, right? So what are the skills that are needed? Most of the engineering colleges, many colleges are focusing on English language speaking skills. Language speaking skill is good, right? If you're able to communicate well, then you are able to communicate what you can do, can get it done, and things like that. But with ChatGPT coming in, you are able to do a little bit more. Can show that you are knowledgeable and you have operational knowledge on certain tools and capabilities, and you can figure out what career you want to build upon. The interesting thing to start with is what are the area that you want to solve a problem in. For example, you said commerce, right? Are you interested in GDP related problem or GST related problem? Or are you interested in top line revenue growth for a company or bottom line saving for the company? You can think in all those lines. You never had a chance to take a particular concept and say, what does it mean? And what does it have it for me? You can say, I'm a learning student. I want to understand GDP. From me walking to a company, if I want to use GDP as a topic, what are the ways in which I will be able to contribute and what are the area that I can exercise my capabilities on that. You can get a bunch of answers, whatever you are comfortable with, you will be able to prepare yourself and you'll be able to present it. And you will be probably about 10 to 20 times better than any of the candidates that you have. If it makes sense.
Very true. Also, as an interview prep, it's a wonderful way to figure out what is it that the company is looking for, rather than just have background information on the company, which is what search used to give you, saying that, okay, this company has X number of people. Maybe one of the things you can ask is that this company is into a mature category. So, what are the ways in which I can help them build revenue or whatever it is?
Correct.
Or what are the auditing tools or what are the auditing skills that they would want?
Absolutely.
Or what are the, the various other
aspects of
functions that are available in the company.
Correct.
And then I think you can loop this back to saying, if I was at an entry level in this, in statutory requirements, for example, what would my job be like? In which case, you can then come back and say, okay, would I like doing this in the first couple of years?
Correct.
Or is it something that I don't like? It's if you
This-
that.
Exactly. You got it right, Venu, sir. You don't have to limit it yourself to one career. You could do accounting for a couple of years. You can do deep science, new material for next couple of years. Or you could do mathematics for next 2-3 years. So nothing stops you, right? And
Right.
previously, corporate would say, do you have a master's degree in maths in order for you to solve the maths problem, right?
Right.
So that is where the beauty comes here. So if you want to solve a maths problem, let's say linear programming or matrix multiplication. So people would say, go learn matrix multiplication. It may take some 3-4 months for you in order to get the prowess, sit with some expert to learn it or some programmer to learn it. And it'd be 6 months before you can actually apply anything in that. But
Yes.
the generative AI has something known as just-in-time solution capability for you. Right?
Okay.
So if you are able to define the problem, it will give you the answer. If you are interested in fundamental understanding, it will give you that as well. But if you want to keep moving on with more and more problems to solve, you could do that. You could jump from linear programming to solving an environmental problem. Carbon credit, how do you do that? What are carbon credits? I don't have to have a PhD to talk about carbon credit. I need to have some fundamental understanding to say, this is carbon credit. How do I apply it to my environment? How do I say it and show it? These kind of new possibilities are keep coming at them. And here is what is interesting. It is not only the student that need to be open. even the corporates have to be open to say that it is not necessarily you need to have a master degree credential or a PhD to solve a problem. As long as you have a orientation and an interest to solve a problem, you are good to go. That is another orientation that will help society at large, both from the student's perspective and as well as corporate perspective. It will help them a lot, I think.
Let me then ask you something which is fairly basic. In terms of some people like a certain amount of jobs which don't involve continuous learning. I am meant to do a certain kind of thing. I like doing that time and again. But those are the kind of jobs which are most vulnerable to automation, right? If
Right.
if I'm doing something which is regularly, if I'm just issuing, let's say, invoices, or I'm just preparing invoices and issuing them, to a large extent, these things can be automated, which is what we're finding. But if you are looking at new opportunities for the company to explore, people in commerce might think, but that is not my job. My job, you're saying that the fundamental nature of a job itself has changed, the job description has changed.
Correct. That is correct. So there was a time specialists used to be having a value. There was a time
Right.
generalists used to have value. So it keeps oscillating between the time, right? Now I think it is a time for the generalists to uh, have the center stage, if you will, right? It doesn't mean that the specialists will go away. Specialists will always have nuances. They are like artists, right? Like calligraphy writing. I mean, even that a system may be able to do, but you have a value attached to certain kind of artistic expressions that are out there,
Right.
right? There could be some challenges, but the best of the categories will always remain and they will always.
Right.
All right. So we were on the generalist versus specialist. So um, now it's a time for generalist. At some level, if you look at it, you would have noticed this trend, that people finishes engineering degree, they go back to do MBA to become a generalist so that they can manage a corporate or a company like that, right? Now you are able to do both breadth and depth simultaneously. So because of that, everybody becomes very useful and handy in terms of offering their intellectual capability to solve a particular problem. So the needle is moving more towards uh, making everybody be aware of what needs to be done in a more effective fashion. Hope it makes sense.
Okay. And where do you think this is going? What have you seen from the interactions that you've had with students so far as to how they believe that things will evolve?
Uh, Currently, we are in a very confused state, I think.
Right.
Because like I said, the educational part, where we need to have a separate session for that, they are lagging behind in terms of uh, what needs to be imparted, at what speed, and how to hyper personalize it. Because right now, if you look at the class, for sometimes the class is 120 people. Can you believe that? Right. So for 120 people, one talking head is delivering something, whether they learn or not, some level they don't care, right? And the exam is there, they will probably it is all industrialized for them. So some deliberation need to happen in terms of uh, how to be sensitive about what people are learning, what is important for them, how to align uh, what skill they need to impart. Some deliberation need to happen. After that, we will be able to give some orientation on how they can form their career. So if you really look at the early 1930s, people would say, as long as you get a degree, you are good to go, right? But now it is slightly different. You need to get a degree, or you don't get a degree, but you need to be good at solving a problem. I also think of things like, Michael Faraday, who is a greatest scientist, who was part of electricity and magnetism together. Uh, Early part of his life, he was not even a school graduate, right? And he finished it later on, right? So we are at a singularity point that uh, we don't know enough about the knowledge itself. At the time of electricity discovery, Benjamin Franklin is writing to uh, Queen at that time, saying that electricity nobody knows. Everybody is on the equal ground, right? Everybody can contribute, right? So it sounds interesting at the same time confusing for us, right? So we are at that kind of a point with respect to generative AI. We don't know a lot of things, but there are a lot of advantage for people who have started using it already, right? So everybody is at the same level. So it can be frustrating for a strong PhD guy to have a conversation with somebody who doesn't even have an engineering degree, but he or she is able to contribute well, right? That kind of complex situation we are walking into.
Facing right now. Okay. Let me make the announcements and come back to you. I think Murali made some wonderful points about how software and search the earlier phase was all deterministic, whereas generative AI has moved into the area of being probabilistic. And careers are probabilistic. You're not very sure exactly where you're going to land, even with all the degrees and the learning that you have. You don't know which company is going to find your services, crucial or even willing to hire you based on what they require. And companies themselves are struggling with how they will deliver value in the times to come, which is why I think he made some extremely telling points about how, education itself is undergoing such a massive change where there's a state of confusion which is prevailing right now because students aren't very clear about where they should be going, which direction. When you tell them that you can go in any direction, it's equivalent to saying that is not advice at all. So everyone is looking for a certain point of view of where do they begin. But I think in the early part of the segment, he spoke about how if you are into commerce, for example, and your potential target is a bank, you can now find out a lot more about what the bank does and what are the jobs for which they require people right now, and then align yourself to those jobs. But that requires an understanding of how will you prepare yourself for that skill and how will you get that skill in place for the bank to find your resume attractive. In the final segment, we shall go into how this will impact day to day life, how this will impact education, and what are the ways in which we can be prepared for it. Because, like it or not, AI is going to be a significant part of how we see the future evolving. So, if you've liked what you've heard so far, share, subscribe, like, and tell people about it because the idea is to get more people to understand that this is a show which helps you understand how to build a career, how to understand what you're good at, and how to then move forward to establish yourself. So, what are the changes that you're seeing on the ground, Murli, in some of the places where you see that AI has been implemented and companies are seeing the benefits?
There again, some mixed report are there.
Okay.
So MIT has come up with a report saying, gives you an impression that 95% of the pilot on Gen AI haven't seen the return of investment, giving you an impression they are failing. Actually, return of interest investment is a very complicated topic. For any new technology, return on investment is never less than 3 years. For the first time, before 6 months, they are looking for return on investment, right? Those are interesting aspects, right? And there was another report saying that people who are using ChatGPT are becoming dumber, right? So that is again cause for trouble or concern for a lot of people, right? There are different ways to unpack the message. The message is at some level is misinformation, right? So let's take an example of a calculator. If you use calculator frequently, then your arithmetic capability may be going down, right? But that is okay, right? You may be developing some other capability for that, right? And besides, who is good at multiplying two large numbers? It's a no-brainer. Calculators are better. You don't have to learn something to do that, right? So when you use ChatGPT for most of your questions or answers, or what you want to know about in terms of design, development, solution, everything you are using it, that means your questioning capability is going one level higher. You are able to solve more complex problems. You are able to tackle more complex problems. So that is the value that you are getting. That report, though it captured what you lost, it didn't capture what you gained, in my opinion. Okay. Now let us come to the return of investment part. A lot of people are trying because they believe that can be useful further, right? Technology is there, but the best practices and methodologies are evolving. So it will take some time for you to actualize the return of investment, quote unquote. There is another way to look at it. I say that the new ROI, it is the return on intelligence you have to look at it. You don't have to look at investment as in cash, right? You are building wealth, and wealth is not directly related to cash, right? So I think that with generative AI, you are going another level, you are evolving, and that evolution will take you onto a path to provide more value to humanity as a whole to solve bigger problems. தமிழ்ல பெரிதினும் பெரிது கேள் அப்படின்னு சொல்லுவாங்க. அந்த மாதிரி.
Okay.
So you can aspire for higher, better, good things to do from capabilities alone. And that becomes a very important one, I think. Hope it makes sense.
And I don't know, exactly like you said in the beginning, when electricity came, if we were to stay with that analogy, no one knew what were the various applications that would come in the next 20, 30 years. I heard that, steam engines, factories used to run on steam, and there was no question of breaking it up into discrete parts because you couldn't do that with steam.
Correct.
Whereas electricity, you could move it into various, sections, and then that changed the fundamental way in which factories were organized. So, so I think
Good point.
we are beginning to not even understand, we are beginning to see the potential of what AI will create, because the first thing that happens is it upends a whole lot of existing industries.
Exactly.
So they're saying advertising is going to change, and Facebook comes and says advertising agencies will not be required in future. So people are terrified.
Even industrial analysts, they're sharing similar report. You don't need McKinsey's or Gartner.
Yeah.
Let them not get angry with me on that. So I think you have to look at it or unpack it in different ways, right? When the new technologies arrive, like you said, in the early part of the century, when the electricity was discovered or invented, whichever way you look at it, the distribution was an important problem. Until the time of a brilliant engineer like Tesla coming in, it was a very hard problem for them. And then after that, everything, the control theory came, everything that is mechanical can be changed into electricity, and the productivity efficiency improved, and job didn't go away. It only increased, actually. They call it Devon's paradox. when you improve productivity and efficiency, the demand for such a service never goes down. It only goes up, right? So, with respect to automation, new technology taking away job, in terms of the actual job definition, they may go away. But in terms of new job getting created, you're going to have more and more jobs than is what my impression, right? Let me also tell you about a couple of more technology that keeps coming just behind the generative AI. One is quantum computing, right? So the quantum computing is just following, and the compute capability alone, if you look at it, uh, it is not like Moore's law about 3 times, 4 times, or 10 times, and things like that. It is more like 4 to 5 orders better, 40, 100,000 times, 200,000 times. That is the level of compute capability we are looking at, right? So the way to architect the next generation solution, that itself requires a lot of capability, right? And following that particular capability, we also have a vulnerability that is coming up. That is called Q-Day. Q-Day is the quantum capability. When you reach 1000 or 1400 qubit, we are supposed to get that. That means your existing encryption that you have, RSA 2048, ECC, everything will be broken easily. So you need to go on to something like a post-quantum encryption, or QKD, they are saying, quantum key distribution mechanism you got to go. According to some analysts, these are larger than Y2K problems. Originally, they thought it will take 2030 for them to get to a Q-Day. But with advancement in quantum computing, it is nearer to 2028 January.
Whoa, that close. So you were talking of how quantum computing is going to be very important in the next few years. Could you continue along those lines?
Sure. I was talking about quantum key distribution and ECC breaking and post-quantum encryption and things like that. So these are technology we need to quickly adapt more like right now, right? So we can't wait for the academics to give up the courses. We need to catch up. So I think that is where connecting the dots with GenAI will come. So technologies like advanced material, space technology startups. India is number 3 in the world. Tamil Nadu is supposed to be a very good place for launching space technology. And according to Satya Chakravarti, there's going to be an IT kind of boom in space outsourcing services, if you will. So we are in the right place at the right time. We need to catch up with the technology. I think, Gen AI will take us to that arch, if you will.
Okay, okay. So how can students who are in academics sort of prepare themselves for this? What are their sources that they need to go to?
I think, I would recommend all only open source and freely available tools for them. No need to excessively spend, because these are all commercial enterprises. They need to make money. Unless you are earning money, you shouldn't be spending money. That's the way corporate works, and even the individual should have that. Um, Use ChatGPT or Gemini or DeepSeek to the extent of credit that is freely available for you. Then stop it once the credits are over. Use open source. Look for new technologies and trends that are out there. Keep tracking them. Keep your learning open. And there is no problem you should be shying away. Any problem that is coming at you, you should be willing to solve it, and you will be able to solve it, is my take on that.
So certain principles remain. That is, be prudent about how and where you spend your time and money, because those things will never change irrespective of what happens in the world. You still have to deliver value, find value, and figure out what your position in this entire thing is, in this whole ecosystem is. Because as the system changes, you have to change as well.
Correct. Correct.
So,
Couple
what
of
do you think has. Yeah, please.
sorry, couple of things that are slightly different from the traditional one is don't worry too much about fundamentals. Go for learning new stuff. That is more important than trying to understand what are the undercurrent things that are going on. Sorry.
That's very practical advice, because people get, deterred by the kind of things that are coming at them and not the possibility. And I think the people who are just plunging into things straight away and then trying to figure things out are in a much better position than people who are sitting on the sidelines and trying to figure out what is happening.
Correct. You said it right, sir.
Right. It is not, this is the time for action. It is the time not for reflection, because at a time when there is churn, you need to be able to take advantage of it and then shape it according to what you are able to do based on your strengths. Otherwise, there's no point.
Exactly. I agree. That's what
Because
trying to.
I think, this politicians have said this, and I think, look at every crisis as an opportunity, not as a problem. Because that's the time at which a lot of change is possible. Whereas in peacetime, when things are very quiet and everything is settled, it's very hard to bring about change. But at a point when there is ferment, and there is ferment in technology, then that is also the time that you can sort of leverage it to your advantage. So, what would your advice be to youngsters today as to what they should be doing outside of the class?
Outside, keep your eyes open. I mean, I think they're already doing the right thing in many ways. Right. They have a special social network, and they are exchanging ideas and technology, trying out a lot of things. And I think, that they need to figure out uh, how to solve a problem using technology, not by yourself. Don't try to solve it by yourself. You can always lean on technology to solve a problem. Learning comes a bit later. Learning is lifelong, and you can always have eternity to learn about things.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing what I think is a marvelous arc of having started work when the internet had still not arrived. And here you are talking of what is changing,
Yes.
not just at a local level, but across the world. Thank you for your time, Murali.
Sure. Appreciate it. And people can reach out to me if they have some questions, ideas.
Okay. I'll put that in the notes, and then, figure out how they can be in touch. Thank you very much for spending the time. That was Murali Sundaram, and he talked of how generative AI can be your guide and your friend and your solution provider, provided you put in the work. And that really is what today's generation is about. They're not waiting to be told, and they're taking it head on. Next week, another guest, another career. Until then, keep watching.